to my Facebook and make sure that it is doing it correctly this time.
Okay.
Because the last time I did it, it was not doing it correctly. Let's see. Let's refresh this. Okay. And let's make sure everybody can see it. Edit audience, public, save. Make sure you edit the audience on your actual Facebook page so that people can jump into the comments.
So can you hear me right?
Yep.
Okay.
Make sure you edit audience when it's on your page so that
Okay.
people can. Perfect.
Okay.
Because that's what I forgot to do.
Got it. And then I have friends. Yep. I'm going to do public. Come on.
Yay. Okay, we're live. So we will wait just a couple of minutes to see if we get some folks in, and then, we'll just start chatting, and we'll chat probably about 45, 50 minutes or so. We'll just sort of see how it goes. So you've got a show to do, yeah?
I do have a show. It's not for a while, but I'm also so my home bar here in Columbus, Ohio, District West. We have 2 shows a night. If there's not a production show, it's just 2 cabaret shows. And then a really good friend of mine, she has a Scooby-Doo themed show. And I was going to hotspot before my show at 11.
I love that. I have a real fun Velma number that I enjoy doing. So I love some Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Have you seen the new Velma show where it's more like towards like for the adult audience?
I've not. I've heard about it. This is the one where Velma is lesbian, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can stay here. We don't have to go to Facebook. The comments will come here, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Perfect. All right.
Okay. So still just waiting to see what we've got.
Okay. I'm going to hop over to my Facebook and see what we've got.
Yeah, because I think Hey, Derek. Hold on, I'm going to make sure Derek can see it.
Okay.
Yes. Can you check your Facebook and make sure that my live is actually live? Okay.
So is this how many of these have you done so far?
You are number 2.
Ooh, okay. Because I know that you did one with Bianca Stevens.
I'm going to do one with Giselle Monet from Oklahoma. We're going to talk about STIs and public health. And of course, like the mental health that surrounds that. We had a really great conversation, realizing, both of us have a career having worked in public health and, HIV, et cetera. So I think that'll be a really cool combo. I know I've talked to a couple of people that we competed with. I may start to kind of like diversify out. I probably will. Just trying to get like really specific topics that people are interested in. It got a good response, the last video, and it does look like we have some viewers. Looks like some folks are watching with us. Still we'll wait for anybody that's joining us. Hi, I'm Davida, and this is Mahajera.
Wait. Hi, everyone.
And you live in Columbus?
I do live in Columbus, Ohio, yes.
Columbus, Ohio. And we're going to be talking about gender identity today and mental health surrounding that topic, and, all sorts of fun things on the, it's such a controversial topic these days, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's something that is being talked about not only within the queer community, but it's being talked about in legislation and it's being
Mhm.
talked about in um, almost everywhere. Everyone has like their opinions, everyone has something that they want to chat about in the realm of gender diversity, and it's something that you see almost everywhere.
Yeah, and you know, it's what's interesting to me is you see really polarizing opinions across political spectrums, gender, sexuality spectrums. You know, you've got even LGBTQIA people that are really like aggressively, you know, have issues
Mhm.
surrounding this topic. And you know, the place where I'm curious, what are your thoughts about why people get so polarized on this topic?
I think it's a matter of understanding. So a lot of individuals, especially, I'll kind of start from the smaller group and then kind of work my way out. So if we just talk about within the queer community, a lot of individuals have differing opinions just because it becomes a generational thing. You know, I have had chats with drag performers and trans individuals who have been in the community for over, 40, 50 years, even all their lives, and they have very differing opinions about how the subject of gender diversity should be talked about. And then you have the young folks who, and I don't put myself in the young folks group because I feel like I'm in like that weird millennial before Gen Z group, and I also have my own opinions, but a lot of the younger folks, they have their own opinions and how it should be discussed. I almost said the word attacked because a lot of both sides of like the age spectrum, they attack this opinion or they attack this topic, and I'm like, no, they have like their opinions, and it's not like doesn't have to always be an attack. So that's my view
Right.
about it. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm with you. And I think that, well, so just like we had talked about before, I kind of want to kick off, you know, just talking about, well, Dex commented homosexuality.
Well, she's it is about
Like it's
homosexuality.
cross-dressing today. Not really. I'm just kidding. Oh God, I'm gonna get canceled. No, but I definitely like I did with the conversation about addiction. You know, want to have a conversation about like, well, okay, so from the mental health vantage point, like, what are we actually talking about? Like, what is this conversation? So I'm just going to kind of shoot out for anybody that's watching or watches this in the future, you know, just a couple of definitions. So, of course, biological sex are your primary and secondary sex characteristics. Chromosomes, they are what we are born with. They are not things that generally change without surgeries, etc. It's you know it's just based off of DNA and biology. Now, most people would say, yeah, okay, so that's male, female, that's it, except that it's male, female, and intersexed, because there's about 2% of the population who have indistinct primary or secondary sex characteristics. So it's not a small number of people that don't neatly fit into option A or option B. And then you have separate from that, you have the psychological experience of gender, which is how someone you know in their mind psychologically experiences gender. And I think the easiest way to talk about that is just to talk about how it's we identify with things that we may perceive as more masculine or feminine without really knowing why. We just know that we do. Like we enjoy wearing makeup. That's traditionally considered to be a feminine thing now in our culture. In previous cultures, that wasn't necessarily the thing. You know, you've got numerous examples historically. As a matter of fact, the Japanese invented nail polish 5,000 years ago to distinguish royalty from non royalty, and it was not a gendered thing. Um, so I think it kind of gets into that conversation of understanding how we psychologically experience it and how we want to express that through our gender expression based off the social norms at the time. For people that are, and I've got my little DSM here, right here to talk about like what is gender dysphoria. So it's a marked incongruence between one's experience, expressed gender, and natal or birth gender of at least 6 months in duration, as manifested by at least two of the following: marked incongruence between experience or expressed gender and primary and or secondary sex characteristics. So that's body dysphoria. Strong desire to be rid of primary or secondary sex characteristics. Again, body dysphoria. A strong desire for primary or secondary sex characteristics of the other of the other gender. Strong desire to be the other gender. Strong desire to be treated as the other gender. A strong conviction that one has typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. And then there's some other things that are not even in this little doodad that I've got here in front of me that talk about toys, talk about preferred clothing, a lot of things that are more like social. So there's a really clear description from like the medical psychological vantage point. But what I find really interesting is, so because at one point in time, the conversation about, you know, gender dysphoria or being trans was a very binary conversation. You know, particularly in Western culture, it was, okay, the software doesn't match the hardware, so we're going to switch the hardware. And ta-da, it matches. I'm comfortable. I'm happy living my life. But as you and I talked about this week, there's dysphoria is so much broader than this. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Dysphoria, in a lot of individuals who are queer and even non-queer, it has a lot to do with just how they feel, like in their gender expression. Me, for instance, I experience a lot of gender dysphoria when I wear a suit. I hate wearing suits. It is probably the worst thing. It's like wearing a Halloween costume. Like I can either feel really great about it, or I'm like second guessing, like, well, is it great? Like, is it like a great costume, that sort of thing? But it's almost like I'm masquerading as something I don't feel is right, if that makes sense.
It does.
Um, and a lot of queer individuals who experience gender dysphoria just don't feel whatever is either external, or it's not even just external, like their clothing, but also just like how they're being presented, societal, like in a societal view. It just doesn't match how they feel inside. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it's kind of there's this voice from society that's trying to dictate gender expression, and you know, it's interesting because of course Native American cultures, you know, did not dictate that in that way. You know, there was the, you
No.
know, two spirited. You know, non-binary is not a new conversation. You know, as
Nope.
far as somebody that experiences. So I'm gonna attempt. You know, as we've discussed, I identify as non-binary. You do as well. You know, I tend to present cis because it keeps me safe. You know, I live in a rural area, etc. But you know, it was a light bulb for me when I started reading and understanding about it because it wasn't talked about in the late 90s, early 2000s. That, you know, this dysphoria I felt for me, because I did not have a body dysphoria, meant, oh, there's a lane and a way for me to talk about how I experience what I'm comfortable with.
Mhm.
Was that what was your experience like?
Um, Truthfully, I grew up in a very Catholic upbringing, and a lot of it came with, you are born a man, you have to do man things, you grow up to be a strong man for yourself and for your family, and you defend yourself as a strong man. And none of that verbiage, like, made sense to me because I wanted to play with dolls and I wanted to
Mhm.
wear pink and I wanted to, whenever I would be in school as young as the first grade, I have like a very core memory when I was in first grade that the teacher asked us to draw ourselves of who we wanted to be when we grow up. And I drew myself as a teacher because I wanted to be a teacher. But I drew myself as a female teacher.
Uh-huh.
And um, being told at a very young age that, like, no, that's not who you are. Like, you can't draw yourself as that, or you can't play with certain things, or you can't play with certain people, meaning you can't play with just the girls, was very confusing. Uh,
Mhm.
that I don't have another word for that outside of just it was confusing. because being ripped away from what you feel is right, that put a lot of dysphoria on me.
And it makes me wonder, like, what would happen if that were to happen to cis persons?
Mhm.
If they were to have that experience for a week, of no, that's not who you are, or no, that's not okay for you to play with that toy or to wear that article of clothing, if it would engender some sense of empathy, or because part of me wonders if some of the really electric responses to this are because everyone experiences their gender identity in a powerful way. And
Mhm.
so, either it's like an unresolved issue for that person, or it's no, 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 no. Like everyone has my experience. You know what I'm saying? Like I just
Yeah.
wonder, because I just kind of have to wonder what it is. For those that are watching, if you have questions for us, please feel free to pop those into the comments and we will answer them. Um,
You know,
yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, 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 please go ahead.
yeah, thank you. Um, not cut you off, but I will cut you off. Um, I think a lot of on the other side of it, and I don't just put straight people and cis people in this box because there are a lot of queer people who have the same, I guess, like trope against people who are very free about their gender identity. I think a lot of
Agreed.
it has to do with fear. A lot
Mhm.
of people who are on the other side of it who say like, no, this is not right, or blah blah blah. They just have a fear of what makes other people happy and what makes people genuinely free about who they
Mhm.
are. And it's very interesting that there's these things that make you happy and there's people who want to take that happiness away from you. So that's what I feel like is on the other side of this, is that conversation is not being had with the other side. Like why does me wearing makeup make you uncomfortable? Why not even just makeup? Why me carrying a purse? Like why does that make you uncomfortable? Or why me wearing I used to wear like really long acrylic nails and I used to work with a lot of straight men. Why does this on my fingers make you uncomfortable?
Oh, honey, listen, let me tell you what. These nails right here, which I love, they're so much fun.
Mhm.
But anytime I wear nails, in my professional world, I get so much either it's interesting in the teaching realm of things, it's almost like people will do like go over the top to be like, oh, I love your nails, and but like something they would never do, to
Mhm.
a cis female with nails.
Right. Yeah.
Or they would be less likely to do.
Yeah.
Or I get really like you can see the look down, the like, and the shift in body language. And of course, I mean, I read body language for a living, so it's like I see it happening in front of me, and recognize that it's a. And, part of me wonders, do you think part of it is because of the narratives about predatory behavior, or about just in general, like, patriarchal misogyny? Like, why do people associate femininity with something bad?
I think we can talk about this in layers because you brought up two main points of how the straight world and how the cis world has viewed the queer world throughout history. So if you look at a lot of like cartoons that were made back in like the 40s, there are a lot of queer characters who are seen as like the villains, and who are queer coded as like uh, wrong, or like they're evil and
Mhm.
predatory. Um, and it's a lot of that. You probably remember like how people say like, "Oh, don't hang around queer people because they turn you queer." It's that conversation. Um,
Mhm.
the straight and cis world has always made us feel like we are turning other people, especially children, queer. And that conversation is still being had today with drag story time and drag queens reading to children, or drag queens being around children, or queer people, not just drag queens, being around children. It's that demonization that they are turning children queer, or all this other stuff, and that becomes like a predatory thing. um yeah, so there's that conversation that needs to be had. And then when it comes to the patriarchy, as well as like that whole hyper masculine thing, when you take out the masculinity in something, or like, when you're male and you're wearing nails or you're wearing makeup, the straight men and straight world see that as something very threatening, because it's not supposed to be like that. Because when you act, quote unquote, feminine, you're not a man, and therefore you have no power, because men always have to have that power.
Do you think because and now it's interesting because I want to circle back to a point that you made before that I want to kind of reinforce that point now, that it's not just cis heterosexual folks that seem to have that. A lot of, from my observation, particularly gay men, whether it's like a fetishization of masculinity, or the whole like no femmes, or the very femme-phobic attitude of a lot of gay men. What do you think that's about? Or how have you experienced that?
I think it's also the same conversation, to go back to like how the straight and cis world view like patriarchy and masculinity, is that when you take something away from that that is not masculine, then it's wrong. So when you
Mhm.
go into the queer world and you have all these gay men who, one, aren't attracted, or who aren't, they don't like things that are very feminine, or quote unquote like too gay, it's because they have that very toxic mindset of like everything has to be hyper masculine. Everything, yes, we're gay men, but we're very masculine, and we're still going to be men no matter what. Um, in my experience of it, I've experienced both. So, when I was in the dating world, I've had to deal with gay men who are like, "Well, you act very feminine. I don't like that. I don't like that you switch when you walk, or that you don't wear all male clothes, or that you paint your nails." And then when I started doing drag, it was even more of that. They're like, "Well, we don't want to date, or I don't want to date a drag queen." And then on the other side of that, I like dating a drag queen because could you please keep it on? And it's that,
The
yeah.
fetish is, yeah. What's interesting is what seems similar, that just popped into my head as you were talking, is
Mhm.
straight men and gay men thinking that the object of their desire owes them being desirable.
Yeah.
Like comments about women smiling more, or you look better without makeup, or yada yada yada. And I'm like, likewise with gay men, oh, you should not do that, or that. Baby, I got news for you. I don't do this for you. I do this for me, because
I
this
do this
makes
for
me
my bank
happy.
account.
Me and
Yeah.
my right, 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 right. But yeah, it's so interesting because to me it seems like it's actually the same conversation, rooted in privilege, rooted in and also rooted in this kind of entitlement of I am owed you being desirable in the way that I think you should be desirable.
Correct. Yeah, like that's why I said I don't just classify the other side of this conversation with just the straight individuals, because
Mhm.
it is something that we're still having issues with in the queer world, is that gay, hyper masculine gay men need you to be a certain way for them, or need you to be a certain way because when society views gay people, they don't want like a drag queen to be like the center focus of that, or they don't want like trans individuals to be the center focus on that, which is
Mhm.
really terrible.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think would be the ideal societal environment in regards to, like, I'm thinking about like gender expression, socialization, etc.? What do you think would be the ideal circumstance?
I think the ideal circumstance for all this is something very simple as other people not being in other people's business, people minding their business, people well, it's just as
Well,
simple
let
as
me ask
that.
it
Like
a bit more on the
it's not
nose.
complex. Yeah.
Let me ask it a bit more on the nose. If we could wave a magic wand and make society be what queer and gender nonconforming people need to feel safe and comfortable, what would that look like, and what would that look like for cis people?
I think it's more open mindedness and having crucial conversations of, if it's something that you don't understand, let's have a conversation about it. Let's not 100% demonize it. Let's not look at it in because I truly believe it's not just like demonizing where it's like, oh, this isn't right, this isn't right. It's that going back to your conversation about when people go up to you about your nails and they make it such a big deal. You know, a lot of the other side, like the cis straight, and even like the hyper masculine queer individuals, like they make such a big deal about these things where it
Mhm.
becomes uncomfortable to even have those things, like just nails, like because you know you're wearing nails, like women are like, "Oh my god, you have like nails on just like me." And it's like, well, okay, well, it's just because I want to have nails. It's not because I want to be just like you.
Yeah, my favorite quote is, "Oh my god, your makeup looks better than mine." I'm like, "These products were made for you, baby."
Yeah,
Like, watch some YouTube videos.
right.
Um,
I go to Ulta just like you.
right? You know, and I also, you know, I don't know how much we want to get into the weeds about this, but most of the controversy now is about young people. You know, that you see more and more people. I'm going to phrase it like this: rejecting traditional gender expression. Now, that's not
Mhm.
new, in my opinion, historically speaking, but it's just that now they're more likely to maybe pick up a label, you know, to reflect that to others.
Mhm.
Um, and so part of me wonders, is that part of the controversy because little boys want to dress like Elsa? W-
Um, you know, I think it is still within the same realm. And like just speaking from a societal standpoint, everyone wants to like put their opinion on how you should raise a child or how you should
Mm,
raise a
preach.
family, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's wild thinking that society already makes it harder and then the government is making even worse. You
Hmm.
know, there are so many trans young people who are not only getting it hard from like society where they're experiencing society telling them like, well, you're wrong for wanting to change who you are, your parents are wrong for wanting to help you change who you are, and then here comes the government making even it more worse where they're like, well, we're going to ban all this because we don't believe that you should be able to express yourself and have that identity that is you. And it's all of that, and no one even puts the child to the forefront of how they're experiencing it. Because I've watched before this live, I watched a lot of congressional hearings about
Mhm.
gender affirming care and how the government should go about affirming care for trans youth. And no one thinks to put the child and how they're feeling to the forefront because a lot of them think that, well, they're too young to think about what's going on. No, all of this is centered around them. Why don't we ask them how they're feeling about all the opposition that they're experiencing?
Mhm.
And it, it's wrong, in my opinion. It's wrong to not put them in the forefront when they're already in the forefront. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Well, essentially, when
Because
it's if the conversation is already about children and how they're experiencing gender identity and expression, and I suspect, and you and I talked about this earlier this week, it's that there's a lack, like people aren't understanding the distinction between that psychological experience and physiological experience. That yes, we understand that there are things medically and physically that maybe you're not the best choice, you know,
yeah,
for a minor, that maybe those are not the best decision. But things like social, environmental, you know, those can make a pretty positive impact on a lot of, you know, I think in terms of how what immediately jumped into my brain was something like JROTC or Boy Scouts, and
mhm,
how a little boy, you know, or now, you know, a little girl can participate in scouts, how they feel when they have that uniform, how
yeah,
that, I know this may seem like an obscure example, but I kind of think about clothing in general
mhm,
as, you know, having an element of that presentation to it. um you know, I kind of think about it in that same lane, that I think you can have the conversation in a more nuanced way, that because ultimately it's up to a parent what what happens like they have to say yay, nay. But, but to operate from the vantage point of, no, for you to be a healthy child, you are going to have to perform this identity of either G.I. Joe or Barbie, and we know that is harmful. As I don't know about your experience, but my experience as a child, it was harmful, because, I was forced to do traditionally boy things and have traditionally boy toys, and was not allowed to have a Barbie doll, even though I desperately wanted one, and played with my sisters all the time. I just think that's the nuance, like what I think the videos you're talking about. It's all of this, like, about, the medical conversations, which are controversial.
Yeah.
But there's no stop and say, okay, so this is a thing. Gender dysphoria is a real thing. Mm-hmm. And these, there are young people that experience it, and it's very difficult for them and often very isolating. What do you propose we do about it? How do you propose we address it? I'm not asking you. I'm talking about these politicians, as though they think if we eradicate trans or gender nonconforming persons, that magically this won't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, it's the same with all things that the government is banning, like Roe versus Wade. You just take it away, or you do take it away, but it's like it's not going to disappear. You know what I mean? It's even going to make it worse. So by banning gender affirming care to young kids, like the access to it, and stopping the process, like when trans people or trans youth are already on hormone therapy and things of that nature, when you stop that makes it even worse for them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like from the medical standpoint, with the government taking those things away from trans youth, it's already establishing from a young age that how you feel doesn't matter. And that's mm-hmm. why young people today are suicidal, because you have all these different things like around you telling you how your feelings are invalid and how your gender is invalid and how you wanting to transition is invalid. And it's something that they shouldn't experience, if that makes sense. Because like mm-hmm. within that, like with them growing up, like they need to have like the supportive all that support in their life. And all of this like happening around them is just not conducive to like such a great upbringing. Sure. I don't know how to put it into words, because like I'm kind of like getting heated about it. It was just like yeah.
Well, no, of course, because you're very passionate about it, as am I. And I've worked with lots of trans young people as a therapist, and it's one of those things where the thing that I find probably the most concerning about a lot of legislation, particularly things that are happening in regards to, to women, is this conversation about, we're not a healthcare professional, but we're going to try to. Thank you so much, Dex. But you, Dex. We're going to try to implement our will or opinion without a medical background, be that about mental health, be that about gender affirming care, be that about birth control, be that about abortion rights, etc. And it's just mind-boggling to me that people get so caught up in the argument, they don't stop and recognize, y'all, a politician with no medical background is making policy about healthcare, about who can get it and who can't. If that does not scare you or concern you, it should.
Right.
And as I had, and I had shared my opinion with you, my feeling that I think we have to be extremely conservative with medical intervention for minors, because we've got lots of information to suggest that sometimes it doesn't go well. And we don't have a lot of evidence about what the long-term effects of Lupron are, which is the puberty blocker. We don't have a lot of, and so given that, like, that's something a parent should be informed of and should know.
Right.
Before they make that decision with their child. But again, that's between a child and a provider, parent provider.
Yeah, a child parent and provider. And then another thing that a lot of these people in the government who are opposing gender affirming care to minors, a lot of their argument is that the parent is not being considered when it comes to how a child transitions or how a child goes about transitioning, which is completely false.
Yes.
You know, let me, before I get it wrong, um, the American Association of Pediatrics on their website, they have this whole part of their website that shows that the parent is always there 100% of the way through their child's transition.
Yes.
And it's insane that the government says like they're not when they are. And you know, I was talking to my partner about it, how the government thinks that, oh, medical providers are just making these decisions for parents, and like they're, you know, doing barbaric things to their genitals and their hormones and things like that. Well, what about things like circumcision? You know, that's a to a lot of cultures, that's a barbaric process to put a child through, a baby through, and no one's talking about that.
Yeah, no, it's well, you know what else no one's talking about, Maha?
Yeah.
So the number one, oh, that's very interesting, Cass. I didn't even realize Lupron was used for endometriosis. That he's talking about that they'll probably try to block Lupron and he's a nurse, and let all those with endometriosis suffer. I didn't even realize it was used for that. That's awful. Um, but you know who has the majority of gender affirming care and procedures? The overwhelming majority? That would be cisgendered folks. Boob jobs, gynecomastia surgery, hormone replacement after menopause or andropause. Like
Mhm.
the bulk of gender affirming, but again, privileged is this is that conversation of, you
Yeah,
know, not recognizing gender affirming care is as old as the hills. You know,
yeah,
you just didn't pay attention to it because it's socially acceptable for you know, a cis woman to get breast implants. Like
yeah,
I worked with a girl at one point when I worked in cosmetics that her parents paid for her to get boobs at 15,
yeah,
you
that's
know?
insane.
Yeah, and there's no conversation about that. No, like it's just like glossed right over. Um, so I think this is all a really valuable. With the last little bit of time we have, though, I would love to talk about, you know, the new Miss Gay America Femme contest. You know, you and I both got to compete at Miss Gay America,
We
and
did.
you know, we had talked about how much we appreciated, you know, the change to personal interview, you know,
Mhm.
to where it didn't feel like that there wasn't a lane for somebody that is non-binary, if that makes sense. You know, I still
Yeah.
think there's ways to go with that
Mhm.
category and how they judge the way people are dressed. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I also think they have a ways to go because with fashion progressing in different ways, there's a lot of conversation to be had about like, well, what's appropriate for interview? Because like not every person, because before we got on the slide, we were talking about gender dysphoria and how like a suit makes me feel. You know,
Mhm,
not
mhm,
everyone wants to wear a suit, and not everyone should wear a suit, and
mhm.
there should be more conversation and more light how people present themselves fashionably.
And this, I mean, that feels like a nationwide. And what I was kind of hinting at when I was asking you about cult changes in culture is
Mhm.
how amazing would it be if there was a change or if we got to a place of where, you know, and so people are going to say that I'm like, you know, a radical leftist for even saying this. Like if we did away with the men's and women's section and it was just fashion. And like if you liked, you know, a skirt or palazzo pants, or you liked, you know, a flannel shirt, like that's what you buy and that's what you
Yeah,
wear and that's what you like, and nobody cares.
yeah,
Like, and you know, the idea about like what is professional wear, letting it evolve, you know, and so that because I think I feel like I know what looks professional, you know,
right.
like to me, if somebody were to wear like a nice turtleneck and like some very nice fitted palazzo pants and some tasteful jewelry and they're non binary, to me, you look very professional.
Yeah.
you know, and you look like you're there to talk about business.
Correct.
So I love the fact that you know, the Miss America organization, because as you and I talked about earlier this week, most queer people, I think, experience some dysphoria, even though they don't realize it, you know, because it's just, I think, a part of the queer identity. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that this organization is trying to address being more inclusive to our trans siblings. And, you know, I'm, you know, super excited and hopeful to see what that looks like. What are your thoughts?
I'm very super excited. I'm very invested in seeing how all of this is going to go, because on both sides of competition, you have on the Miss Gay America side, you have now trans men who perform as drag queens. They can also compete in the Miss Gay America system, and I think that's incredible. Like, I'm so excited to see that,
Me
because
too.
yeah, I here in Columbus, there's a wonderful performer by the name of Firestorm, and they also have multiple drag personas, both as a king, male entertainer, drag queen, all of that. So there's someone like that can do it all. So I'm excited to see how that part of the competition works out.
Wow.
And on the other side of that,
Awesome.
I'm excited to see how Femme works out, because I mean, I have a lot of people who I think should do it, and I'm excited to see what it looks like.
Oh, same. I like, there's some, like, I can't, I literally am on pins and needles wanting to find out who doing this pageant. Cause
Right.
I just feel like it's gonna be some, like, kind of who's who, you know, of
Hmm.
trans performers in the drag world. And, you know, anywhere where they're, you know, as I've shared with you, my sister is trans. And, you know, anywhere where trans persons are celebrated, like, that's a place I want to be, you
Yeah.
know. So that makes me really happy. Are there any final thoughts that you wanted to share in regards to this conversation?
In regards to this conversation, I think it's very important to take care of your mental health, regardless of how you identify. But more importantly, as queer individuals, we are met with so much opposition. We're getting it from our smaller communities, our larger communities, and then now our government. Also, let me not say now our government. Our government has always been opposing us as queer people.
Yes.
Um, as as radical as we want to be, and as much as we want to have these conversations, we should always support one another, and we should always support ourselves,
Mhm.
throughout whatever journey that we are going through, whether it be our gender, whether it be our um, pageant drag journeys. Just support each other and support your mental health.
Well, I want to tell you how very much I appreciate you, you know, taking a chance to jump on this live with me and being vulnerable and sharing your story and the things you're passionate about. I think I very much believe that continuing to build upon a sense of community and connection and communication is how we can try to move forward and fight some of this vitriol and some of this misinformation, to better protect ourselves and others. So I really appreciate you being a part of that.
I appreciate you too. It was wonderful. You pulling me aside and having our little moment that we had at Miss Gay America, and having that shared experience, and continuing to talk about our shared experiences. So I appreciate you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it was, honestly, it was my suspicion. I was like, I'm betting that there's not a lot of other, you know, out non-binary persons. I could be wrong, but
Hmm.
I'm like, let me go up to Maha and be like, I'm with you. I see you. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing and
Well,
being who
thank
you are.
you. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right,
Also,
everybody.
congrats on your new prelim.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, everybody. It has officially been announced. Miss Southern America is going to be at Johnson City, New Beginnings. It is going to be on the. Hold on, wait a minute. I should have already had this ready to go, but
May 26th. I saw it
it's
earlier.
it's May 26th. Yes, registration's at 11. Interview is at 12. Doors open at 6. Pageant starts at 7. The website is www.gaysouthernamerica.com. It's going to feature myself, Dextasy, Desi Love Blake, I hope we have lots of contestants. I had a wonderful experience with that prelim, as far as promotion, sponsorship, and just friendship. Just again, connection. It was really awesome. So, but thank you so much. We will be back again. We'll have a new topic and person to chat with next month. If you're not, please follow me on all socials at LivingDeVidaloca, Living DeVita Loca. And my YouTube is Living DeVita Loca TV, which is where this video will live after this. If you have questions, comments, concerns, well, if you have concerns, you're going to need to go get your own therapist. Can't be me. But if you have questions or comments, inbox myself or Maha. And other than that, I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.